So today we have a little surprise, a Christmas surprise. Radu of cv30 has joined us. He's an early supporter of Quadrant and happens to be in Singapore for holiday and a working holiday.
Yes.
So we thought we'd take the opportunity to meet up while he's in town and also give an opportunity to ask questions, and why not record it?
Yeah, well, this is what the Santa brings, you know? He brought me here to Singapore and to you guys, which is fantastic. I mean, I was really hoping to meet and talk personally because we talk so much, but it's so much nicer when you can really shake hands and see the environment and just have a feeling of the people whom you appreciate and look forward to what they bring to the market. So really glad to be here, and thank you for the time that you took to have a discussion.
No problem. No problem. You see the office is still humming the one day before Christmas.
And it's a nice view. Well, of course, you cannot see it from there, but you have to believe it. It's a nice view.
Yeah. So So what brought you to Singapore? What you're here for a few days, and you're doing a combination of work as well. What did you hope to see while you're here?
Mostly back in my country, there is no work during holidays and I get bored. So I said, let's keep to a country where the climate is much nicer, because it's also -5 degrees. So here, obviously not. Also the fact that I can meet some people and see how the business environment is, because we are thinking also to bring part of our business to Singapore and meet all these wonderful companies with whom we've been in contact, and really have a first-hand feeling about how the blockchain environment is developing here in Singapore, and what's the trend, which are the latest, let's say, not hypes, but which are the latest developments, and how the future is laying out.
Yeah.
Because you somehow are ahead of Europe. And we like to see what's the news, because this is where the sun rises in the morning. We have a 6 hours delay.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's very, very true. And I think in Singapore, due to the regulation, the government actually building an environment, a sandbox, as you can say, that supports the community. It actually allows companies to actually start building, which is always which is good. So it's we allow. Singapore has enabled a lot of companies to raise funding here and start their companies here, but also has a business environment to make it so that they can go the next step further as well.
Well, I'd say that's a bit more than that, because from what I've seen in Asia, and especially so far, this is the 4th day I have in Singapore, there is also something quite different than Europe or even America about this, meaning that culturally speaking, here the mentality is more set for technical world than you would have in Europe or US, because there, okay, business is good, but not that much technical people there in the general layout don't like that much technical stuff. But here in Asia, they have quite an appeal for people.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that facilitates more, not only the regulations, but the general mentality helps a bit drive the blockchain adoption.
Yeah, well, it's true. Like in Singapore, prior to the blockchain revolution, is that the fintech. So there's a lot. So you see, like in 2010 to 12, just general VC funding and tech support was coming from the government. Then you saw fintech. There's like 2014, 15. You saw a lot of pushing towards that. And then of course blockchain came with that. So that the government was actually already supporting a lot with the accelerators. It's been a step-by-step progression.
I really wanted to have, I'd say, to understand better this way of thinking, because it's somehow so far off what's happening in my home country. Being data-driven is not something that we see a lot around in Romania or Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
Which is very much an offline mentality. That's one part of the trip, just to have a really good grasp on how things are going here and where they might lead from this direction coming.
Yeah.
And that's one part of our meeting.
Perfect. Yeah, do you have any questions? I think open the floor.
Well, how have you been doing? what's the direction of the business now?
Yeah.
Which are the latest developments? I have many questions, but it depends how much you have space.
Yeah, we can. We can go one at a time. But yeah, so I guess the biggest thing for us was, we did launch our mainnet back in November. So with IMDA, is government authority here. So it's Infocom and Media Development Authority. They lead all tech for the government here. So supporting a lot of the projects from fintech to blockchain initiatives. What they want to do is that they want Singapore to have robust digital platforms. So they're supporting 4 companies, Quadrant being one of them. Singtel is another one as well. And so what we're doing is working with them. We launched our mainnet back in that's the end of November. Our product's out, and now we're driving sales. So over the we've hired enterprise sales here in Singapore as well as in the US. And now we're just expanding our pipeline funnel. Business-wise, we already are revenue generating, and which is sort of sets us apart from a lot of other projects that would have to wait 1 or 2 years before they get there. So we're in a good position there. So on the business side, we're on that part, we're driving towards profitability. So how can we break even so we're a self-sustaining company? And the good thing is we have the tools and the product already out in the market. The next phase or next big release that we're working on right now, codename Project Falcon, is enterprise adoption. How do we basically translate all the demand we have on the enterprise side into the demand and utility of the token? When you look at the realities when you're dealing with enterprises, how do they get their hands on the token to be able to use the system? These are real issues that are faced by companies. How do they do it? What is the taxation on it? We're working with our tax lawyers. That is, how do you ensure that when people consume services, that you're abiding by all the laws, that you're doing the right taxes, that you're not subject to withholding taxes, and so forth. And this is a very important thing for companies and crypto companies to understand is that you still have to play within regulation, because if your customers are enterprises, they don't want to be breaking rules. They have to make sure that their businesses are legitimate, that they're paying their tax correctly. It's all about a balance between those things. And so in mid-January, we'll release the first phase of that program. And so that's one of the big things that we're working on right now. The tech is just in its last stages of development, and then we'll release some news on that. And then the next big release will be at the end of March. Part of the digital platform with IMDA and the government is we'll be layering on AI services on top. So AI and microservices. So if you have the data layer, but now what can companies do with that data? Some, of course, will want to access it and put it into their own systems, but other ones will actually want to be able to consume the data directly in the platform. So we did a POC, we released that or demoed that to the government in the end of October, and now we're working on the commercialization of that. So tying in the usage of the token into consuming these services on top. So everything from the AI microservice marketplace, visualization, and actually running algorithms directly against the data will all be able to be done on Quadrant.io. And so that release is scheduled for the end of March.
That's very interesting. Do you see in the future the usage of data shifting from the private sector to the public sector?
On the consumption-wise, or on the consumption-wise of data? So I guess when you really look at it, we consume data all the time, but we consume in the form of services. And so I'm not sure if you use Grab out here. Grab is the Uber of
it's much better than Uber.
They did win. They did win the market. There is no Uber here anymore. But even like when you look at that, the optimization of the service is all done by data. 4 years ago, prior to Uber or Grab being in Singapore, if you were just waiting as a tourist outside a mall and it started to rain here, the rain gets really heavy. I'm not sure if you experienced it the last couple of days, but it gets extremely heavy for a short period of time. And people would sit there for 45 minutes to get a taxi. As a consumer, or as a person, you're a citizen, you're sitting there for 45 minutes to get a taxi. It was the most frustrating thing. There was only one taxi cab that would actually comfort taxi where you had an app, but it wasn't so strong. But other than that, you're trying to call and you just wait and wait. Now with Grab, Of course, with search pricing, that they use data to optimize where the taxis go. Everything from like now, people get mad if they have to wait 8 minutes to get a taxi in Singapore, where it was a few years ago, and that's all driven by data. So when you look at how these services come out, that they're all optimized with data. A very simple use case of data and point of interest data. When Grab and Uber first came to Singapore, you would stand at the corner and you'd try to type in the address of where you are, and it wouldn't show up. And you're like, and then you'd sit there and you get frustrated and you try to figure it out. And then a couple of years later, now wherever you go, you'll get it. You'll instantly be able to type in your.
I still got that issue with the driver. Like yesterday, I tried to call a cab and he was putting me on a different. And I think I had like 3 drivers canceling on me because they were in a completely different part.
Oh, they're in a different part of the thing. It's you'll make sure you usually use GPS. It'll actually now that it'll actually get you the proper address, where a couple of years ago you didn't. And so for us, so at Quadrant.io, what we're working on in the location analytics space is most of our data. So this comes from raw feeds to where people are in the current, which helps optimize services, to POI to actually be able to deliver these services. So to your point on is it going to be consumers? Consumers aren't going to consume data. They don't really care about data. They want things to run. And so it's organizations who are taking these different feeds in, optimizing solutions, and that's what gets delivered to us as consumers. Another simple, quick example is just a bank. When you want money from a bank, where do you go to an ATM? You have no idea. And we're not going to use data on where do people walk, but a company like OCBC or DBS could use location data to understand where do we put ATMs, so people can consume our services better. So we've always been more of we are an enterprise play, a B2B play, that consumers want services that make their lives better, and data can help do that. Data is extremely complex for the average person who really just want to get better.
Do you think in the future data would be a source of income for the people who produce it? I mean, the small people.
Yes, yeah. So that's actually one of the things that we looked at here, or we are looking at and have looked at and are building towards. Is that's a great thing about cryptocurrency. So when you look at your data, to be honest, an individual's data is not really worth that much. When you're buying vast amounts of data, it's only pennies per person, or sorry, fractions of the pennies per person to the actual end buyer in that. So our data is not worth that much on an individual level. It's only when you start aggregating it. And so the issue that we've seen in the past is when you try to monetize and pay people back, you can't do that with fiat, because there's always these fixed costs, these banking costs. So if I have to pay you 50 cents or 60 cents, but it costs me 50 cents plus 33%, or sorry, 50 cents plus 3% from PayPal or something to transfer the money over, you can't do it in the micropayments. And that's actually one of the interesting things about crypto, is that now you can do that. You can actually cost effectively distribute down the value chain. And
Notice CryptoKitties is online.
Yeah, if CryptoKitties is driving the price of gas up, then that's always an issue. But we actually have some smart contracts that allow us to distribute on a much cheaper. But we did notice that you have to watch the gas prices. And I always find it interesting that like gas prices actually then put it at the same as doing bank transfers, or like, are we getting anything better here? But we have, like, when you look at the way that you can distribute funds, like even like some of these bounty contracts, that you can distribute funds very cost effectively. And so what we look at, to your question regarding can people get paid, yes, they can be. And at the first bit, it's going to be that it won't be enough to entice the average person. But as more and more companies are able to implement these systems and pay down the value chain, or pay back downstream, that it's you can start paying back people for their data. I don't think it's going to be there in the next couple months. It's one of those things that it has to be on a large scale to make it effective.
And do you think one of the use cases should be, or could be, that people should syndicate for their data together?
Meaning that?
Meaning, like, there are 2 billion people on Facebook.
Yeah.
That's a huge syndicate.
Yeah, and that's actually one thing. So with Quadrant, the whole like mapping, the theme of Quadrant is how do you map these things together? Because individually, it's not worth it. But once you start building these hubs, and then you start forming them together. So if you bring in Facebook's 2 billion people, then you bring WeChat's other 1 billion people, then you have a huge panel. But it's how do you bring those things together? That's the hardest thing in this space. Because when you look at the end consumer of data, they don't really want to spend the time aggregating all these different syndicates and bringing all these pieces together. They just want to find a solution to their problem. They want the raw data that can give them that. So this mapping is a very actually vital part to enable these syndicates and enable these individual pockets of data to actually effectively monetize.
How many other competitors do this in using also blockchain?
Sorry, in terms of?
And mapping the data, putting them together, stamping and delivering to...
So everybody actually approaches a little differently. There's no like direct comparator that like if we walked into a boardroom, we'd be direct on that. Like I'll look at one solution or the other. When you look at the data space, actually your competitors tend to be your partners as well. It's actually a very weird integrated space. You have other aggregators, who, like you mentioned, there could be, say, Facebook, or let's use another, just any social media app, any app, like a dating app or something. They might have their own data set, and they might try to sell it to an end consumer, like a Procter & Gamble or a Unilever or something, that they may sell directly, but they also might sell through an aggregator who also then couples that data with other data and then also sells to the same buyer. So the data space is actually quite complex, that your friends or your enemies are your friends, and like we have companies that we represent their data in the market, who people are, oh, is that your competitor? I'm like, no, actually we also represent their data as well. And so we do see that in this space, that in the data space, competitions can be your friends and your enemies.
So it's competition agnostic.
It's an interesting, weird industry, but that's the way it works. That's the way the data industry works.
It seems it does great for, let's say, giving an equal chance to everybody on the table.
Yeah, it gives everybody equal chance. Everybody has a chance to bring their data and bring their solution to the market, and everybody sort of pitches it can pitch it in different ways to solve different issues. Because the same data set can solve multiple different issues. So you might have a data set that might be used for consumer time. So an example being, if you had footfall traffic of Disneyland, Disneyland, they can use it themselves for their operations. How many people do we staff? How many people, basically how many people staff? Where do we put the staff? How do we control our supply chain, order goods? And then that same footfall traffic can then be used for marketers. Understand, okay, how many people go to Disneyland? What was the demographics of the people? What's the average ages? But then you also get out the finance space who's using it to understand the profitability and the stock price of Disneyland. Is there less people going? Is there more people going? Exact same data set can be used for a lot of different uses. So when you look at it, one company, they may sell into one use case, but then they might get channel partners to sell to the other use cases. So that's why you give everybody a chance, but then you also, that's why I'm saying your friends or your enemies, because you may produce this data set, you may sell to the financial space, but you don't sell to the FMCG. And so they actually take channel partners, and so everybody gets an opportunity to make a business out of it.
Would the blockchain, for me as a simple user, create more transparency, meaning that I could track who uses my data? And
that's why we're using blockchain. So for us, like, we've had a business since 2014. We built our first and commercialized our first data exchange platform 2015, and then with that, in 2017, we started noticing, because there's all these intermediaries, that your data can come from, like, we basically had it was August of 2017. One of our buyers asked us, okay, we need more of these feeds. And I'm like, okay, so I went to the market and said, okay, we have a buyer. Can you guys provide us more? 4 companies gave us almost the exact same feed. And I'm like, who made this data? Like, oh, it's ours. I'm like, okay, but like, do you own it? And they're like, oh, of course we do. I'm like, there's something wrong, because we're seeing almost the exact same thing. So we knew something was up here, that people were misrepresenting their data. And that's the issue in the data economy, is that it is very easy to try to mask where the ownership comes from. And we just saw, like, this is going to blow up. People are going to realize they're spending tens of millions of dollars on data feeds that they don't know where it came from, and that they're buying the same thing from multiple people. And that's where blockchain came in for us, because blockchain is really good for supply chain, be it for agriculture, be it for goods like fake goods and consumer goods, and also data. So whenever you try and create transparency in any market, blockchain actually is a very good use case there. And so we're applying blockchain to the data supply chain.
Where do you think the market is going?
On the crypto side?
Well, I would say on two sides, because on the blockchain side, what I think and what I see is that a lot of people don't really know that much about blockchain. They know more about crypto.
Yeah.
And I think it's beneficial for them to know more about blockchain, as they will also help the entire ecosystem.
Yeah.
So that's the blockchain part. As the crypto market, I think it's great because it brought awareness to the general blockchain idea.
Yeah.
And it's an easy sell.
Yeah, so actually it's interesting, the one thing that with the crypto crash in the fall, actually it sort of hit a lot of the good news of blockchain. So if actually Walmart released that they're going to be, they are making it mandatory that anybody who's selling in produce has to Walmart stores has to be on the blockchain. And so we see this huge enterprise use case where if you want to sell food in a Walmart, the biggest retailer in the US, that each piece of lettuce or carrots or all has to be on the blockchain. And this is to help trace for Salmonella and E. coli, and so that to recall something. But this is huge. And there's all these use cases that keep coming up that are getting buried in the news because everybody's caring about the price of Bitcoin, when we actually see that there's a lot of good stuff going on blockchain. So I think there's going to be there's huge adoption going on already that people are just missing because it's not as sexy and not as glamorous to talk about. But yeah, so blockchain, it's the use cases are coming more and more, and we're seeing huge enterprises adopting them. So I said the future is very bright if you are on the development side and you want to see actually adoption of this tech. That it does solve problems, it solves real world issues. And we see that people are noticing and deploying these. So we're not, a few years ago, a lot of the POCs were going on, and it's always, okay, let's test this out, let's see if it solves this. We're actually seeing commercial deployments now. So I'd say if you are, blockchain dev, looking for a job, that there's going to be enough demand for those skill sets going forward. On the crypto side, it's interesting. I think that there's a lot of moving parts going on right now. There's a lot of moving parts, and there is they're not settled, or they're not even settling yet. That meaning that we saw in the 2017 the rise of ICOs, and then we saw that carry on to 2018, which was allowed cryptocurrencies to be used for financing. I think that brought a lot of good into the market, into the investment market, that allowed people to basically get into projects or get into companies that wouldn't be able to. So we're sitting here right now, but like you think 3-4 years ago, to actually have being able to contribute and support projects on a global scale just didn't occur before. So we're VC backed from Wavemaker Partners. They have offices here in Singapore, but also in Los Angeles. That's part of the Draper Venture Network, and so every November we have our CEO Summit, LP Summit, based in San Francisco and San Mateo. And whenever we go out there's always a big joke about how VCs, like, okay, we're coming from Singapore, but like how VCs from like not only like LA VCs don't even like to invest in San Francisco VCs. Throw a New York VC in there, a New York-based VC is not going to be investing in an LA company. And so you put that on a global scale, like you don't really see investors going out of their comfort zone. They want to be only supporting or investing in their local businesses, and that's a problem. And that's sort of a limiting factor too, is that how do you get access to these type of projects? So I think crypto has opened up the door to this. Being able to do these like either crowdfunding projects, or if you really believe in the tech, you can do it. I think that in terms of where you look at utility tokens, everybody's talking about STOs right now. I think there's still some growth and maturity that's going to need till we actually find the model that abides by all regulations, and that makes an environment that a truly global investing environment. I'm pro for it. I'm also pro regulation, meaning that I do believe that we all have to work within the work within a system that allows everybody to succeed without causing I should say without allowing too many bad actors.
Yeah, well, thank you for your answers and discussion because it's really nice, and from where we stand here, it doesn't look like a crypto winter. There are 30 degrees outside. It's very nice weather.
It's very hot and things are going on. So, no, thanks for coming in. So I do appreciate taking time while you're in Singapore to meet up.
It was my pleasure.
And I guess to everybody else too is that if you are in Singapore, come drop by. We're easy to find. So
you should definitely do. It's very nice in Singapore and very nice discussion here. So
cheers.
Yeah.
Cheers. Thanks.